We're recording.
Cool. All right, so let's get started. Thanks everyone, as always, for joining our quarterly Livepeer community call. We live stream this at livepeer.com/TV, and then we also record these and upload them for later viewing, which I think is how many people consume this content. What we're doing today is the kind of the project update call. We'll give the kind of state of the union on what's been going on in Livepeer, talk about a couple agenda items. It's meant to be an open discussion, so if anyone can feel free to interrupt, ask questions, share thoughts or ideas as we go. And as we said, we are being recorded, so just be aware of that with your participation. Cool. So hopefully you can all see my presentation in the screen share here. As a reminder, our mission at Livepeer is building the world's open video infrastructure, a big, long mission and a long journey, but we have a great start with a live kind of video transcoding network that's been running for 3 years and a live streaming product built on top of it, which is powering real applications today, both in traditional video world and in the Web3 world. So good progress along this journey, but a lot of work to do ahead of us. So for today's call, I don't think I'll be speaking too long. I think we'll have time for discussion and maybe get some time back at the end. But what I want to do is kind of just give a quick update on network stats and network usage, talk a little bit about the livepeer.com product and what's being worked on over there. I'm going to kick it over to Yandin to give an update kind of on our supply side network of node operators and talk about the incentive program, give an opportunity to talk about something that comes up a lot, which is gas cost and scaling. Not a lot of content there, but really if people have concerns or questions or want to share opinions about how they're feeling about that, that'd be a good time. And then a little time at the end for Q&A. Okay, so what's going on in the Livepeer network? Right now there's 2,600 actively delegating accounts. There's 50 active orchestrators, and there's a 53% participation rate, which means of all the outstanding Livepeer tokens, the 23 million, 12.2 million of them are staked for 53%. The top two numbers have stayed kind of relatively flat over the past couple of months. Some new members joining, some members leaving. What's interesting is the participation rate has actually declined all the way down from a high of over well over 60%. I don't have any information about that or indication of kind of where that stake is going or anything, but what's interesting is it's actually kind of approaching this important 50% number, where if it drops below that, then Livepeer's inflation rate would start to increase. So I don't have any theories about whether that will happen or won't happen. I don't have any feedback about what's altering and affecting this participation rate. But it is interesting that it's approaching that number. Anyone on the call happen to have any perspective or any indication of kind of where the tokens are being put to use, if not in staking? One thing we've seen is some increased deposits of Livepeer token in DeFi and things like balancer pools. So that might be one potential option.
I could imagine that people gamble on tax-free token exposure, because like in countries like Germany, if you don't have them at stake but keep them on your own account and hold them for 1 year, then it's completely tax-free when you sell them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that might be analysis. People are kind of weighing the inflationary gains and that rate right now versus that potential benefit. Cool. Okay, so that's participation stats. So usage is actually a really positive story for the public network. Here's a quick graph of kind of, this is a lowball estimate because we don't have visibility into the full usage on kind of this open permissionless network. But from known sources and kind of the API usage that we're feeding in, we're seeing growing streaming duration. This is a chart of streaming minutes by week, and you see kind of an upward trend over the last couple of months, culminating with a couple all-time highs recently of over 200,000 minutes streamed per week, heading towards over nearly over 1 million minutes over the course of a month, which is a non-trivial number. It's pretty, I think it's something we can be really proud of in the Web3 ecosystem on this open public compute network. And one of the things that the team's working on is actually making this kind of estimated minutes streamed metric a lot more public and front and center for the community to see, to look at, to rally around, to contribute to. A good model here was we really like the way that the graph put queries per day front and center, and everyone was able to kind of connect that to usage and see that number increase over time. And I think in Livepeer, this is going to be a really positive number and key story as more users are onboarding. So excited to kind of make that more visible. I think the number that is visible right now is fees. This is the thing where you can actually see exactly how much money is being earned because these tickets are cached on chain, whereas minutes of video doesn't touch the blockchain. And so here you also see a really nice kind of up and to the right graph with some much higher fee volumes over the last 2 months than what we had been seeing previously as usage has increased, culminating with even over 100% gain in the last 7 days relative to the time before that. So this 7-day fee volume of almost $4,000 of fees flowing through the platform is pretty meaningful. That's 3 point something ETH that has been earned by many of the orchestrators on the network that are doing the work and distributing to delegators. And again, looking forward to seeing this number grow up because it's really having a positive effect of attracting high performing node operators to the network. One little caveat I would give here is this does reflect increased usage, but also increased ETH price plays a little bit of a role because if the market were perfectly efficient, node operators would be reducing the price in ETH that they were charging to encode video if the value of ETH increases. But we're not seeing that like super efficiency where people are swinging their prices around as a result of the changing ticker price of ETH day to day. And so as prices have stayed constant, we're seeing more fees flow through for now as a result, but I imagine that'll get efficient over time. Cool. Another cool thing, Yanni will give a little bit more of an update on this. We've seen a growing number of orchestrators that are meeting the performance bar for actually being useful on the network. We implemented this performance leaderboard. We ran an incentive program, and orchestrators are constantly being tested and given a score for how they're performing. And here we say just in the Europe region alone, where we said a score of 3.0 is kind of sufficient to be indicative of doing really useful, helpful work to the network. You see over 10 nodes just in that region alone that are kind of doing good enough. And that's great. That's great coverage for a region where there's a bunch of growing usage. And you see a number of nodes with really high success rates. That's for every segment of video that they get, do they transcode it in sub-real time? And you see a bunch of nodes over the 50% mark, which we kind of think is the minimum to be useful, but a lot in the high 90 percentile mark. So that's great news, and I think that's reflective of the both the fees and the performance incentive program that we ran. Cool. I think those are the highlights on the public network. A quick update on the livepeer.com product. So as a reminder, the public network is completely open, permissionless. Anyone can run a node, deposit ETH, use it to broadcast and transcode video. What we've done at livepeer.com is we've built an end-to-end streaming product that kind of hides all the complexity, hides all the crypto, handles the scaling, handles letting people pay, with a credit card in dollars in order to just use the video infrastructure, and then it routes its traffic onto the Livepeer network to use it for transcoding. And so this product is really important for onboarding users and for meeting the existing video industry where it is. And it's been live for probably 4 or 5 months now, but it's really just been iterating and getting to the point of maturity and reliability where we're able to onboard scaled users. And so one of the cool releases is self-serve pricing, where any user can start with a free personal account, stream up to 1,000 minutes. And then as they hit that limit, they can automatically upgrade to a pro plan where they're charged a half a cent per minute for transcoding, which is 10x cheaper than what you see on the cloud providers. And then this has been really good at kind of connecting the dollars that people are paying to the fees that the API pays back into the network. And we've seen a number of customers every day are onboarding to the free program, and a number of them converted to the paid program. It's still small, just getting started, but a positive indication and good for driving demand to the network. There's new developer documentation here at livepeer.com/docs. It has guides, it has tutorials, it has a reference, API reference. And I encourage anyone to check it out. You can get started with your first stream in just a couple minutes. You can get started building an application in just a couple minutes more. So again, this should help with adoption. And we also have a number of tutorials that have been published on the blog at the commercial site that teaches users how to use Livepeer.com and build video applications. So excited about the work we've been putting in there. Things that are coming soon is that we'll have kind of a beta version of stream recording and playback, which is actually really important. That's been kind of a blocking feature that has prevented a bunch of people from adopting. Is just the simple aspect of wanting the live streams to be recorded so that they can fetch the segments and have them be played back later. There'll be a beta version of that out and available very soon. And if anyone actually wants to get started playing around with it today, they can contact us, and we'd love to make it easy for you to kind of get started building on that. And then there's some work under the hood, stream health metrics, and which will be good for troubleshooting, and kind of global ingest and playback URLs that help with reliability and ease of use of the platform. Cool. A quick word on user adoption is, we've been focused on this user-generated content vertical. These are, sites where users create content. There's many streams of content. Some are popular, and those are the ones that might be easy to monetize, but there's this kind of free long tail content that's a little bit less popular, and running infrastructure is very challenging to scale and cost prohibitive for this long tail content. So this is where we focused and where Livepeer can really shine. And we're seeing kind of nice adoption across different verticals of UGC. We have a great kind of reference case study customer in PlayDJ, which we've talked about a lot. Check out playdj.tv. They just redesigned their site. They're growing a lot. Really becoming a really nice streaming platform. We've seen user adoption in kind of local and long tail sports. We've seen a lot of events. Users show up, and this is not high production value, high profile single events, but people building kind of long tail events platforms, things that are really popular in COVID, where things like creators can host streams, fitness people can host streams for classes, these sorts of things have been evaluating and adopting Livepeer. And then of course kind of the Web3 decentralization focused media use case, where people are building some form of an alternative to YouTube or Twitch, which I think is kind of challenging to go directly at that if you don't have a differentiator. But if you have some kind of Web3 crypto enabled tie-ins or a different community that you're focused on, then it's an opportunity to build kind of a new media platform there. And so we've seen a bunch of sites adopting and building on Livepeer for that. Cool. Okay. I think that's it for my updates on the network and the supply side. And the commercial product. I'm gonna hand it over to Yandin to talk about kind of node operators and incentive program update there. But before I do, anyone have any high level questions or things they're wondering about that I can dig into? Oh, cool. All right. Yandin, why don't you take it away?
Sure. So towards the end of 2020, I think the two biggest supply side related initiatives that the team worked on were, one, the introduction of the performance leaderboard, which Doug already showed in the Explorer, and two, based on that performance leaderboard, the first iteration of a performance incentive program, what we deemed MVP performance incentive program. And this program was scheduled to run pretty quickly after the launch of the leaderboard. And the intent of this program was to serve as a first pass experiment in what it would take to add more performance correlated incentives to the network. So at the moment, there are different types of incentive mechanisms in the Livepeer network, but a lot of them are targeted towards stakers. And the incentive for performance is, a lot of it comes from delegator activity. So delegators actively delegating to orchestrators that perform well. And the goal of this first iteration of a performance incentive program was to see what other ways are available in order to increase the magnitude of incentives to perform well on the network. And because this was a first pass experiment, it was run at fairly quickly in a kind of loose and fast manner, where the main priority was to see how much we can learn in the span of that 3 weeks. So I'll focus on that for the next few minutes. And I think what might be helpful is to just add some visuals as I'm talking. So I'm going to share my screen, and we can take a look at a few resources right now. Cool. Can everyone see my screen? Someone just give me a verbal thumbs up.
Yes.
Cool.
So I was getting a visual thumbs up.
Awesome. So the way that this performance incentive program was structured was that it was actually a grant-funded program, where the way that it started was that it was there was an application for a grant from the Livepeer community node describing the basic rules of the program, the purpose, and the structure. So what you're seeing on the screen here was the original grant application that describes the purpose, the structure, and this was ultimately approved. And the way that it was structured was, it was a program that lasted 3 weeks, and each week corresponded to a round of the program. And there was a 7,000 LPT budget for each round. So on one hand, 7,000 LPT is not a tremendous amount if you consider the amount of inflationary rewards that are minted by the protocol on a regular basis. But at the same time, it's not a trivial amount, especially if you are an orchestrator that has already invested in performance setup. You basically have the potential to earn some additional LPT with minimal work on your end, as long as you're performing well. So 7,000 LPT per week budget is what we started off with. And then when we got started, we created this forum thread, where this forum thread kicked things off with the program rules. And each week of the program, we updated this thread with the latest results from that week. So I won't go into the details of each individual week, but just mentioning it here for reference. If you're curious about the performance of various orchestrators on a week-to-week basis during the program, you can take a look at that thread, and there's a breakdown for round 1, round 2, and round 3. So what might be helpful is taking a look at what we observed over this week-by-week period, and some aggregate data that was captured is shown here. So first off, we had one metric that we thought would be interesting, which is the trend in the number of orchestrators that met the threshold score during this 3-week period. So what you see on the screen right now is, starting from the kickoff of the program all the way through to the end of the program, the change in the number of orchestrators that actually met the threshold score, which is defined as 3.0. And that the scoring methodology, we can get into it if people are interested in, but is meant to be a rough approximation of the utility of an orchestrator for real transcoding for a video application. So you can see here that at the kickoff, we started off with 5 orchestrators that met this benchmark. And by the end of the 3-week program, we ended with 9. So not a large increase, but a positive trend nonetheless. We went from 5 to 9, and we actually saw an increase in the number of orchestrators that met the threshold score on a week-to-week basis. The second metric that we thought could be interesting is the total scores of the top 5 orchestrators across all regions. So as a reminder, as I mentioned previously, the score is meant to be an approximation of the utility an orchestrator can actually provide to a video application. And it's on a scale of 0 to 10. So we had 3 regions that were a part of the program, and each orchestrator can max out with a score of 10. So if the top 5 orchestrators in each region all maxed out with a score of 10, then across 3 regions, the max total score amongst all those orchestrators would be 150. So what we captured is that over the 3-week period, what did the total scores of the top 5 orchestrators across all regions look like? And similar story with the threshold score graph that we just looked at, where we started off with, I think at the beginning of week 1, somewhere around a total score of 70, and then we ended the program with a total score of a little bit above 100. So we ended with a little bit above 100 out of 150, and that was pretty sizable increase from where we started, which was less than 75, around 70. So also indicative of improvements in performance over the 3-week period. So 2 areas that we did not see as much improvements in were the number of active orchestrators. So there was actually not a significant change in the number of active orchestrators. From a rough glance, it looked like we saw an increase by 1 at the end of the first round, but then there was a decrease by 1 by the end of the last round. So while we did see performance improvements amongst the existing set of orchestrators, what we did not see is an influx of new active orchestrators reacting to some of the rewards that could have been earned as a part of this program. Something else that we observed is that of the rewards that were distributed, so at the end of each week, the rewards for that week were distributed to the eligible orchestrators. There actually wasn't a substantial amount of those LPT rewards staked at least 1 week after the rewards were distributed. So some rough stats here are that in the first week, 6,400 LPT ended up being distributed, and only around 1,700 LPT was staked 1 week after that first round. We saw even less LPT staked after the second round, and then we saw an increase after the third round of about 1,000 LPT staked out of the 7,000 rewards that were distributed that round. So this might be interesting to note, mainly because it might prompt us to ask the question of like, why didn't people end up staking the rewards? Are they aware of how the rewards were distributed? And this might just be a useful input into future programs if we think about whether the desired behavior or the best behavior would be for them to stake their rewards afterwards. And just to summarize, I think some of the things that we can observe and take away from this 3-week program, it was a fairly short program, was that so we didn't see a substantial change in the number of active orchestrators. And I think possible reasons, this isn't exhaustive, include the size of the rewards. As I mentioned earlier, it's a non-trivial amount, but it's also not a really large amount, especially if you consider a lot of the rewards that have been minted by inflation in protocol. And then another reason might just be awareness of the program. So it's possible that it was a quickly put together program, fast and loose, and there wasn't exactly a lot of marketing or awareness spread around it. So that might be a factor as well. We observed that staking of rewards was not immediate, which I think is interesting because if the more rewards that you end up staking, that also impacts the amount of additional inflationary LPT that you could be earning. So a question to ponder there is why didn't certain orchestrators kind of pounce on the fact that they had more LPT that they could stake and therefore increase their inflationary LPT rewards in protocol. And then kind of a last one, which is really around the operational surroundings of the program. Because the program was put together fairly quickly, the rules were a little vague. I think the rules could have definitely been more clearly defined, especially to help avoid confusion around eligibility for the program. So I think that's definitely a useful takeaway, because this was meant as an experiment, and I think in the next iteration of an incentive program, definitely want to improve on a lot of these things, and also want to make sure that we don't end up getting bogged down by confusion around rules, and make sure that this is something accessible, transparent, and easy to understand for anyone that chooses to participate. So that's it. That's like a kind of whirlwind tour of some of the things that we observed from this 3-week program. So I'll wrap it up there. And yeah, if anyone has any questions or comments, we can take some time to talk about them.
Thanks, Sean. And yeah, you didn't include it in your takeaways, but I think the fact for a quick experiment that was not necessarily widely marketed, seeing action within the existing community to go from like not doing useful work to doing useful work, and seeing it go from 5 to 9 useful operators straight away, increasing the coverage in Asia, I think were positive outcomes that you think if you were to extrapolate it to a higher scale of rewards and a higher level of marketing, probably more through the protocol or governance than just as a one-off experiment. It shows that people will respond to incentives.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. So just a couple more updates from me. One is just to touch on gas costs and scaling, something that comes up in the community chat a lot. As a reminder, the governance mechanism was used to pass 2 improvement proposals and get them deployed about 2 or 3 months ago, that dramatically reduced gas costs for anyone who is staking and trying to claim their rewards. That includes delegators and orchestrators, and this had a hugely positive impact. It reduced the cost of claiming rewards up to 100x for long-term delegators during times of high gas prices. Just as a reminder, people who want to access their tokens cost effectively, token holders don't need to do round by round claiming anymore. They can just take any staking related action like bonding or unbonding, and they'll claim their earnings. Orchestrators, if they want to kind of efficiently claim their earnings, they should use a CLI tool that's been put out called the Merkle Earnings CLI. If they just use the regular orchestrator command line interface, I think it still does the round by round claiming. Is that still correct, Janin?
I believe the normal CLI tool was updated so that it doesn't do round by round claiming. You have to use the Merkle Earnings CLI tool to catch up, but then afterwards you can continue using the CLI tool, which will use the new functionality, which doesn't involve round by round claiming.
Cool. Okay. So summary is use the CLI tool once to get caught up. That'll be cost effective. And then going forward, the CLI tool will handle things automatically. Cool. So that's just a quick reminder. As far as going forward and reducing gas costs, orchestrators who call reward every day still find themselves paying high fees in order to make that reward call. There's a currently open Livepeer improvement proposal to reduce the costs of this by making reward calls less frequent, and that comes with some trade-offs. This hasn't had a lot of feedback or momentum, but I do think node operators feel the pain of calling reward every day. So, I think there's an opportunity to move forward with this if the community kind of wants to bring it to a vote and I guess kind of analyze the current state of the implementation and testing and impacts and whatnot. So I think this is a topic to be discussed in the LIP repo and on the LIP calls, but it could make an impact. And the last thing I have is just kind of an open question, which is, people do bring up the gas costs all the time in the chat. And if anyone has any strong opinion on how urgent they feel it is to actually reduce these costs for token holders and delegators, now would be a time to share any thoughts, because I don't think there's any obvious super short-term fixes on that front, but obviously like longer-term scaling roadmaps and looking at layer 2s and kind of more advanced technologies are something that we're always like considering, but just don't feel urgently like they need to be prioritized.
I think the entire system is basically affected a little bit currently. It's not only staking related actions, right? It's also setting your service URI on chain, changing your reward cut or your fee cut. That also becomes increasingly expensive at current gas prices. So I don't think there's any very immediate things that we can do there, but it's definitely something to be on the lookout for in the longer term in terms of scaling solutions.
Yep. Yep. And as far as those scaling solutions, people always pop in and ask if we consider migrating to this chain or that chain or this this layer 2. I think a lot of the kind of leading thinking has been on these layer 2 ZK rollup type solutions with full smart contract support as being a promising path forward, except the maturity of those platforms as being deployed yet is not quite there where it would be worth it for us to spend significant time or resources on that type of migration relative to other priorities. But the technology is super promising and gives a strong path forward, which also kind of aligns with where the ETH2 roadmap is going as well. So we'll keep an eye on these prices. We'll take actions as they need to be prioritized if gas prices continue to rise. But for now, I think we could just look at reducing the cost for a lot of the orchestrator related actions as a next step. Cool. Governance in general, not a lot of movement here. One is that we deployed one update a month ago, I think, which is a smart contract now governs the protocol rather than a single, multi-sig wallet. And this, was deployed in LIP 25. It introduced mechanisms for staging upgrades and then executing them after a time delay. This was actually used recently in the recent bug fix that was put into the protocol last week. So good to know that is functional, and good job by the community kind of taking this background step, which lets us move towards more kind of longer term on-chain binding governance. I also mentioned the currently active proposal, LIP 56, for reducing gas costs for reward calls. So that's open for discussion if anyone wants to weigh in. And then finally is just something I think the community should consider, which is thinking about formalizing the security committee that's kind of responsible for executing bug fixes and protocol upgrades after votes. And I think it was kind of ratified or acknowledged as part of the acceptance of the governance process and on the steps towards kind of progressive decentralization. But I think it would be interesting for the community to think about making this more autonomous and taking steps to kind of formalize the process of that the security committee would follow and the process for adding or removing people to it, such that it could be clear how governance could be used to make decisions around this committee and whether it even needs to exist in the future, rather than it being a little bit more vague and arbitrary. So there's no active proposals or discussions around that happening, but I think it's a good idea for the community to consider that. Cool. This is my last slide. Just what the Livepeer network could do better. What do we need help with? What should the community think about? I think in general we need more global GPUs. particularly at scale in Asia. I think there's demand for streaming in those markets, and having a couple orchestrators with kind of reliable scale GPU capacity of a couple rigs that could handle a couple hundred streams concurrently, I think would be a big boost to the network. So we should, that would be a huge help to Livepeer if you could recruit a GPU miner based in Asia with good bandwidth and connectivity to join the network. And the team is here and happy to help get them onboarded, integrated, make their life easy, and maybe even provide incentives as well. And then speaking of incentives, this ties into the performance leaderboard experiment that we ran. But I think it's clear that somehow the community and/or network could use better long-term incentives that route Livepeer token towards those doing effective encoding work at scale. And it's challenging to think about how to put that in protocol, but things like the performance leaderboard program show that there's ways this could be governed outside of the protocol that could help to continue to bootstrap the network. Cool. So I think that is all that I had on my list for this update. Plenty of time at the end if anyone has any topics or questions that they want to see discussed. Not today. Okay, so I hope these updates are useful for everyone. Like I said, they're recorded, they're online and available later. I think there's a lot to be excited about, particularly when it comes to the growing usage of the Livepeer public network and seeing the minute stream number increase, the fees number increase, and especially as we kind of enter this period of kind of widespread crypto awareness as perpetuated by a rise in crypto prices across the board. I think Livepeer is a great opportunity to step up our kind of marketing, storytelling, and tell that story about, hey, we have this huge potential, but we also have actually delivered a lot of real value. There's real usage today, and this is a very legitimate project with a super bright future. So I look forward to kind of ramping up our public presence in the coming quarter, and on the next call, hopefully we'll see some of the positive results of that as well. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll catch you next time.
Ciao.
Thanks, Doug. Bye.
Thank you.